My name, as you can see on the screen, is Lars Peterson, and I want to welcome everyone to the Men's Mental Health webinar today. The webinar itself is going to be about 30 minutes, plus or minus, and then we'll have time for questions afterward. Couple things. First of all, I'm private, just a little bit about myself because I'm going to be sharing some examples. Obviously, I work for EFR, Employee Family Resources, to do webinars like this and other presentations. I'm a private practice psychotherapist as well in West Des Moines. Right now, pretty much 100% telehealth. I also have an office in Colorado Springs. And so that's where my examples will come today. Obviously, I'll disguise the people involved. All the guys' names will probably be Joe. And so those will be well disguised, and they might be in Colorado anyway, so you wouldn't know them either way. So, but it is helpful, I've found, to have examples so the people can actually put a real situation into whatever principle we're talking about today. So with, I guess one other thing is the goal for me today would be that everyone leaves with one or two takeaways that they're going to think about and or do differently, even better, do differently. So if 6 months from now you forget my name and you think some kind of Scandinavian name, Sven or Oli or something, I don't care. But if there's one or two things that you remember from the presentation and that you're doing differently, then to me that's a huge success. And in fact, there'll be a question at the very end to ask you what will happen differently because of today. So our objectives for 30 minutes, a lot. Understand the basics of mental health issues. So mental health for everyone. Learn how mental health challenges are different from men and gain insight into the factors that increase the likelihood that men will seek help. So that middle bullet, I could have a disclaimer on every single slide that says, well, but not all men and also women. And so we're going to talk in kind of broad brushes here so that I don't have to every slide qualify it. Really the disclaimer is that men vary widely. And when I say, you know, this is typically how a man might react, or this might be an issue, for some men, yes. For many, no. But just as a broad group, yes. Do women also struggle with that? For example, we'll talk about substance abuse and the rise in female substance abuse. So there's a lot of variability among men and a lot of variability among the sexes. But these will be things that are relatively true I see in my practice, and the research bears out, you know, in general terms. So let's talk about a mental health disorder. What exactly is it? And I prefer this term to mental illness just because I think it's more descriptive, it's more helpful, and it doesn't put it necessarily into a medical model mode. Not that there's not that component for many. So a mental health disorder refers to a wide range of mental health conditions. And so it's a disorder if it affects mood, emotions, thinking, and behavior. So if I'm anxious, and we'll talk about more about this when we get to another slide, but if I'm anxious, that's for this presentation. If I wasn't feeling a little bit of anxiety, that probably wouldn't actually be normal. You know, it's normal to have a certain amount of anxiety. If the anxiety I felt today was so much that I canceled the presentation, I didn't do it, I couldn't sleep for 3 nights before, that might rise to then a disorder. So examples of common disorders: anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, substance abuse. Common would not be schizophrenia. That would not be a common disorder. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, 1 in 5 Americans manages a diagnosable mental health condition every year. Up to 80% in their lifetime will manage it. I think those are actually low. I know those are pretty high, but I think they're low because people often don't recognize that they're struggling with anxiety, for example. I have some people say, well, you know, I knew I was really stressed out a lot. I guess I didn't realize it was anxiety. So people don't know, and also people underreport. Let's talk about anxiety. That is the most common. Excessive fear, anxiety, and related behavioral issues. And really, the most common one I see is avoidance. I'm going to avoid this situation. I'm going to avoid this person. I'm going to avoid feeling this way is a huge one. But some kind of avoidance is very common with anxiety. 18% of all adults. These statistics during COVID are low. Up to 50% of adults, according to some statistics during COVID, could have been diagnosed, actually, would have risen to the level of diagnosed with a mental health condition. Anxiety, the thing that's really frustrating for me is that only 37% of those suffering receive treatment, and it's highly treatable. I don't consider myself a wizard when it comes to being a therapist, but I am very confident when it comes to anxiety being the reason people come to see me. I've struggled with anxiety. I had a number of panic attacks when I was young, probably 50, 75 panic attacks, so not just one or two. And so I know anxiety kind of inside out. And I do know that it is highly treatable. So that's a real feature. Depression, also common, not as common, maybe 10% roughly. Persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness, no interest in activities. I'm working with a man right now whose main struggle, anxiety and depression both, but right now depression has been hitting him pretty hard, and he said that he feels like he's walking through molasses sometimes. That's how it feels to him. For men, so women, we'll skip ahead just a second, often it's kind of that stereotypical sadness, worthlessness, guilt. For men, it can be tired, irritable, angry, even reckless behavior. So men can manifest depression much differently than women. And that's why it's harder to catch in themselves and actually with others. Older adults can be more subtle, and medical illnesses can definitely be a part of that. So not as common are schizophrenia, bipolar, and Americans who live with what's called, or people who live with treatment-resistant depression. So schizophrenia is about 1% of the population. It's many clinicians, many medical providers would say schizophrenia cannot be cured, that it needs to be treated with medication and others. That would be kind of the common wisdom. Same with bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder does seem to be overdiagnosed right now. A lot of times people with trauma symptoms will present as if they might have some of the same symptoms as bipolar disorder. And it also, the diagnoses seem to kind of come and go in terms of how popular they are. I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but if it starts getting a lot of press and maybe there's more in the medical literature, it starts being diagnosed more, people see it more, then it maybe gets diagnosed even more than it is. It's a real thing. There's no doubt about that, but it may be a little bit overdiagnosed these times. And then treatment-resistant depression just means that people with depression who really try a lot of different things, and it's just resistant to treatment. So substance for today's, and we're going to be going pretty fast today, so we're going to be given kind of an overview. But really anything that can alter a person's mood or cognition. I view substances as really a coping device. And the thing that's so powerful about substances is they work really well short term. I have so many clients that, a couple glasses of wine and my mind just kind of shuts off, or smoke a little weed at night and then my mind just shuts off and I can enjoy myself. It's just a way to kind of shut down that overthinking or take away some of that stress and anxiety for people. The problem is it doesn't work so well long term. Denial is a very common element. In fact, the person I was just working with this morning, marijuana would be her substance of choice, and she kind of goes back and forth about being in denial. Sometimes she'll say, this is a real problem. I shouldn't be using this multiple times every day. And other times she's like, well, I don't use much. It's just a little bit. So denial is very common. So let's talk about some contributors to people's mental health issues, but some of these especially pertain to men. Trauma, everyone, big T, small t. Big T means I had a client who got in a major car wreck and got really hurt. That would be a big T. And actually a person died in this particular car wreck. So for her, lots and lots of trauma associated with that. Small T's would be maybe bullying in school, lower level bullying, just over and over and over, that adds up. And that can really add up and be harder to treat sometimes than one big T. Relationship issues can contribute to mental health, feeling lonely, no intimacy. And that's where men struggle in our culture. A lot of men think it's, well, actually, a perfect example, we'll call him Joe, like all my male clients. So Joe is young, in his 20s. And one of the reasons he really wants a girlfriend is because then he'll have someone he can really talk to about his feelings with, because he can't talk to any guys about any of that in his mind. So, and there's some truth to that in the particular friend groups that he runs in. So for him, he really does experience a lack of intimacy. Learning history for men is real men don't feel this way, don't do this, don't do that, don't act this way, don't let people see, all the things that men hear. For everyone, poverty, a genetic predisposition, physical health issues, those can contribute, life stressors, and overuse of technology and social media. That obviously could be a presentation on its own, but there's a lot of growing research, not just a little bit, talking about the ways in which overuse of technology can be harmful. So let's talk about just quickly about a very simple model that I've now started using with all of my clients because it's been so well received. One way to look at the world, not the only way, but it is simple and it does seem to explain a lot. So first of all, we have a threat system built into us. We're expert at detecting and reacting to threat, okay? So if I'm driving down the road and somebody drives into my lane, whether I'm a really good thinker or not, or whether I even tend to overthink or not, I'm not going to say, it's 8 o'clock. They might be eating, but they could be texting. That's pretty common. I mean, crash 5 seconds ago, right? Threat system is the strongest, fastest system in our body, and that's when we react. Drive system, wanting, getting, achieving, food, clothing, shelter, way back, but now it's all those things that drive us forward. Procreation, sex, that's also part of the drive system. Soothing system, feeling contented, safe, protected, some of those more vulnerable emotions as well. So where this is different for men is, and what I've seen over and over again is, women and men seem to have a similar oversized threat system when they come to me. They feel a sense of threat quite often, and if there's been trauma in their background, that's really true. But where men tend to go is they have a higher drive system, and maybe it's kind of a threat drive. They feel threatened, and so they need to really work hard. And it's often hard for them to relax or soothe themselves or be calm. A guy I talked to just this week, he's a newer client, an older client, said that when he's not productive, like he can't take a nap, his sleep is really bad during the night. He can't take a nap because he feels so much guilt over not being productive. So the drive system. So we're going to talk a little bit about this as we go. Here's a landscape. A lot of men get depressed or struggle with anxiety. And again, these are likely very underreported. 3.56 times more men die by suicide. And the second leading cause of death, males 10 to 34. Also pretty common in older males. Way too common. Women are 1.6 times more likely to receive mental health treatment across any 12-month period. So really striking numbers and disturbing numbers. I've got a family member. I won't go into detail. It's not an immediate family member, and so it's a ways down the line or off. And this family member had some hard things happen to him, and he has been brought up in an environment in which it's not okay for young men to feel these things, to have to need help, to be vulnerable. And so he just kind of keeps plugging along, not really getting the help he needs, using marijuana, using alcohol, and it's really sad to see this young man with so much potential. So unhealthy masculinity. Nothing bothers me. I'm strong. I understand this one from the inside out too. When I haven't been a therapist all my life. I worked in a number of businesses. I worked for Iowa State, University ISU. I've been a mediator. So I became a therapist in 2014, really, is when I started doing therapy. Way back before then, when I started doing my own therapy, I had a therapist tell me that I was the most well-defended person that she'd ever met. Nothing bothers me. Not true whatsoever, and not true for a lot of men. Denying those emotions, minimizing what's there, and having this expectations, well, I shouldn't feel vulnerable. I shouldn't feel sadness like I'm feeling. And self-critical thoughts, I'm weak if. The client that I have, who I just told you about, the older client who can't take a nap because, that would, I'm weak, I'm unproductive, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't have to do that. And then using substances to cope. So this would all be in the realm of unhealthy masculinity that really works against males getting help. I also work with a male who's on the young side in his 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and has a very, very strong self-critic. And a lot of that is around work and who he is. And we'll talk a little bit about that, actually, how that works for people and for men. So more recent stressors, caregivers, if they base their worth on their careers. I have a family member who's a doctor. Her husband is the main caregiver, and he very much would fit into some of those unhealthy, great guy, but unhealthy masculinities. A number of those would fit him, if not every one. And so this was a real adjustment for him to be the caregiver, and he had to find some ways to kind of justify it in his head, but really, really tough for him. Mixed messages about what a man should be. I have the younger client I told you about, who's in his 20s. He's seeking mental health treatment. He doesn't want to keep the cycle going that he learned from his dad about what real men do, and real men don't feel emotions. And his dad is an alcoholic. His dad can be very critical. And what I see, and I've seen this with a number of young males that I work with, is that there's a divide, and we'll talk about that, between the younger males and their baby boomer dads. The baby boomer dads are much more likely to say, well, you don't need therapy, or what are you doing? Like, that's stupid. Again, we're talking in broad generalities, but I don't want to do, I don't have a disclaimer for every slide. So I realize this doesn't pertain to all men, all older men, all younger men. Why don't people get help, especially men? Over 70% of U.S. adults with depression and 63% of people with anxiety won't seek help. Awareness, they don't know it. And men with depression, well, I've just been irritable. I've just been angry. I know of a young person, 18-ish, college student, who wasn't sleeping for months, maybe 2-3 hours a night, didn't realize that was tied to depression. I should be able to do this on my own. I don't need help. Denial has worked just fine. And real men don't cry, don't want to appear weak. So these are some issues that I see. And it's not uncommon for me to get new male clients who received a lot of pressure and influence from the female partner in their life. It sounds kind of funny even for me to say that, but I would say maybe 1 out of 6 or 7 male clients I get, that's when they state the reason. That's the reason. So generational differences, I already referred to that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this, but there is the research really backs us up that younger people are much more open to talking about mental health. And that's true for men for sure. Even more so, I'd say there's more of a generational difference. I've not seen that particular research, but I've sure noticed it among men. Many women are, say, if we're looking at baby boomers, many more women, at least that I've met and I've met in my practice, are more open, more willing to seek therapy, et cetera, et cetera. So this is especially pronounced for men. So invisible suitcase, this is one of those concepts that I'm going to encourage you to consider, to remember. And that's that when I think about the clients that I see, and I've seen some clients who are really, really struggling, really in hard places. I really can't place one client that you could meet on the street or in a business meeting or at the store that you would be able to say, oh yeah, they've got this, they've got relationship problems, or they must be really depressed, or not one. Even the person that I talked about who feels like he's walking through molasses and gets really depressed and spends a lot of time in bed at times, when he's with people, he's good. So, and especially men, it works for women as well, but men, get really good at hiding this stuff very early on. So maybe if you run into someone, male or female for this slide, that's angry, irritable, some kind of a change in their behavior. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe you can't see it. Maybe it's invisible.
Hey, Lars,
So,
can I just jump in here real quick? We have a question. Someone wants you to repeat the part about what you said regarding spouses.
Is that about partners influencing their male partner to seek
I
help?
believe so, yeah. I think so. Yes.
Yeah. I haven't tracked it, but I would say 1 out of 6, 7, 1 out of 10 of the males I see, when I ask them why they decided to reach out, they would say that a significant reason for that is the influence of their female partner. And that might be that, it does not necessarily a threat, but like, why you really have some stuff going on, you really need help. Or sometimes it is, this relationship's in danger, you need to really seek help. So, so at least on some, not the only reason, but on some level, 1 out of 6, 7, 1 out of 10 of the males I see have received some influence from a female partner, which is kind of a striking thing. So research on seeking help, role models. When there are role models out who are able to say, I struggle with mental health issues as males, and I urge you to do this. Maybe, in the military, athletes have a huge amount of influence. So any kind of a role model who's willing to step up and say, it could be an uncle and a grandpa, whomever. Education and education around, there's more to therapy than talking about your feelings. There's some real misinformation about what therapy is about. It's much deeper and broader, much more to it than that, obviously. Sometimes men do better with active problem-solving tasks, homework assignments, problem solving, and motivating, or talking about behavior change, as well as building on positive male traits. And again, male in quotes, responsibility, strength. This can make you a better a person that was, so this person fits a couple categories. This person was a veteran, and this person was influenced by his wife to seek therapy for PTSD, didn't want to, resisted it for 6 months, 9 months. And one of the things that was really helpful for him was talking, when we started doing mindfulness exercises to help him work on stress reduction, but also get in touch with all these emotions that he had just shut down and pushed down. When we talked about how the military had been using mindfulness, and how athletes, and how there were pro basketball and pro football teams that actually hired mindfulness coaches because people could focus better and they could do all these things, he became much more open to all of this, and actually became a very, very good client, really good guy to work with. So my experience with this is getting good information to people. It's not talk about feelings only. Modeling, really important, especially among peers. Some of the young people that I've worked with, I think, have been positive influences on their baby boomer dads about, hey, you know what, this has been really helpful for me. Reframing courage. And again, like I said, with the veteran who was very much resistant to anything about feelings and talking about feelings, making a connection to performance and to stress reduction, some things that he could identify with. So let's talk about this for just a second. This is an example I'm going to go through really quickly about how sometimes all of us judge ourselves, but males oftentimes really like this example, baseball example. So Joey's trying to learn how to hit. Here's his coach. Coach A comes up to Joey and says, Joey, what's wrong with you? Why can't you hit? You have so much potential. Joey, this is ridiculous. You know, you should be doing this and you're doing this. Are you not practicing? What's going on here, Joey? Coach A. As I say these things, think about the coach that's inside your head when you make a mistake. That's how we're applying this. Coach C, hey Joey, you look really frustrated. Here's some pop. Let's just go forget about it for a while. Okay? Distraction, forget about it, denial. Coach B, Joey, you look really frustrated. Is that what's going on? Talks to Joey, validates Joey, gets to the bottom of what's going on, problem solves, helps Joey figure out, okay, Joey, so remember when you were learning how to catch fly balls and it was hard for you? We broke it down. Could you do that here? Could we, how about practice? Are you practicing home? You're not. How could we make that happen? Obviously, Joey's going to do much, much better with Coach B. Which one's inside your head is the key question. Which one's inside many of the male clients I work with's head is Coach A. It's very true for females too. But just about every male I'm working with right now has some form of a fairly strong Coach A. So when I'm talking with males about, and maybe it's not necessary to put it in terms of managing stress, performing better, maybe they're comfortable talking about feelings, which is increasingly true. Helping them think about movement, getting moving, getting on their bike, running, any of those things that help them get active can be really good for anxiety, great for depression. Mild to moderate depression really responds well to movement. Coming into the senses, finding things to look at, 5 things to look at, 2 sounds, 5 body sensations. I've actually done this in the office with people and had people a person in couples counseling who was able to come out of a panic attack much, much earlier than they'd ever done before through just grounding themselves right now, slowing down the mind, which also awareness of breath or sounds. Breathing techniques. Any of you, male or female, who are struggling with stress, anxiety, I'd really urge you to look up some work by Patricia Gerbarg and Richard Brown. On YouTube, they teach the 4-4-6-2 breathing, which is just inhaling through your nose for 4, holding for 4, out for 6, holding for 2, and repeating that 4 to 6 times or more, all through the nose. So in, hold, out, hold. Basically, when you have a long exhalation like that and you're holding your breath intentionally in those ways, it's telling your body, no reason to be in threat. There's no tiger, nothing's happening right now, no car in my lane. I can let everything go down. Informal mindfulness is just about whatever you're doing, really fully doing it. I'm picking up my coffee cup, I'm taking a drink, I'm actually tasting the coffee. My mind isn't way out here. Writing a compassionate letter, I know this is really hard for you. This, talking to your and the letter is similar to talking to yourself the way you would talk to a friend. Okay, so these aren't male specific, but they can be really helpful when there's issues with stress, with anxiety, and with that strong self-critic. So we're right at 30 minutes, which I think is where we wanted to be. And the question is, based on today's presentation, I will What will you do? Will you look up the 4-4-6-2 breathing or other breathing, box breathing? There's lots. Breathing has really become popular because it is such a direct way into our physiology to tell our body, no threat, no tiger chasing me, it's okay. Will you remember the invisible suitcase? Will you, if you are male and you're listening to this, will you seek help if that's what's needed? Or will you at least investigate? And Johanna, I'll turn it over to you for this part.
All right, thank you, Lars. So if anyone has questions or comments they would like to share, please do that while I'm going through the EAP benefits. You can use the chat function and I will moderate any questions back to Lars and share any comments you have. But I want to remind everyone on the webinar today of your EAP benefits. So if you're listening, most likely you have benefits with EFR through your employer. We offer 24-hour phone support. You will always speak with a licensed clinician. So whether you're calling because you want to use your EAP benefits or you're calling because you just have a question about how to use them, how you're feeling, if your benefits could maybe be a resource for you, I would encourage you to make that phone call. Depending on your benefits, you have free in-person or telehealth counseling sessions. You can get telephonic financial and legal consultation, as well as elder and child care resources. We have identity theft restoration services and life coaching. And I would just like to say that oftentimes making the phone call is the hardest step, taking that step to admit maybe to yourself and to someone else that you need to address some things that are going on in your life. Whatever is in your invisible suitcase, there's a really high likelihood that EFR can help you work with those things, reframe those things, reduce those things. And so I just would encourage you to explore your EAP benefits. You can also visit our website, www.efr.org, and you can learn more about your benefits there. And you can also ask a question about EAP benefits via the chat, and if it's something that I can answer, I will address it with the greater group. Usually if one person has a question, more than one person has a question. Lars, I thought this was a really great topic, and June is Men's Health Month, and so at EFR we wanted to put a twist on it and make it Men's Mental Health Month, and so that's what the focus of our communications has been. We also have a podcast at EFR. It's called Emotion Well, and we did speak with one of our own team members, Steve Arneson. He is a student assistance program advisor and former school counselor. He's a dad and a grandpa, and we talked to him about kind of his perspectives of all of those hats that he wears, all of the roles that he wears, and how it has kind of shaped him as a parent and as a coach and as a counselor. We do have a question. Someone is asking, can you go back to the processes that improve help-seeking attitudes slide?
Must be that one.
And I will mention that we always upload these videos to YouTube. And so within a day or so, if you go to our website, under resources, we have a link for webinars, and you can watch the presentation again or share it with someone who you think might be interested in learning more about this topic. We did have someone just mention, thank you for highlighting a topic so often forgotten in society. I think your real life experience, Lars, as a counselor has definitely, given this webinar a different perspective, and I think it's probably resonated with a lot of people.
I hope so.
It looks like we don't have any other questions or comments, so I want to thank everyone for joining. We have another webinar coming up at the end of this month, and I don't have it memorized, but I will let you know in just a moment what it is. We're doing 2 webinars a month all summer long as people are kind of transitioning into a life post-COVID or nearly post-COVID. We have on Thursday, June 24th at 10 a.m., moving from confusing to thriving, life in an almost post-pandemic world. And then we have a couple of webinars in July, Unlocking the Power of Mindfulness and Compassion During Tough Transitions, and My Financial Life Money Matters. And then we will have a couple in August as well. So please visit our website, www.efr.org. Actually, we have another question. Have you seen an increase of anxiety among males during the pandemic?
Yes, I've seen a significant increase among males and females. I'm not sure that I could say there's a difference in the increase, but
Right.
definitely both.
And then another person commented that the action piece is really important to him. He says he will intentionally slow down and breathe and stretch during his day. He has several calendar slots throughout the day, but I don't usually follow through with those. So it sounds like, you know, just being intentional and trying to slow down. And I know I wear a smart watch and it tells me when I should breathe.
Yeah.
And it's an Apple Watch, and I think that it probably senses when my heart rate increases. And so
Yeah.
it's always a good opportunity to take a moment to just slow down.
The one quick thing about the 4-4-6-2 breathing, I've been experimenting with a lot of different techniques myself and with clients, and that's been the one that clients have reported, and I've noted slows my heart rate down the most and brings me out of that threat state the quickest, or just even if I'm not even in a threat, but just you know, doing a lot or busy. And I've noticed sometimes just 4 to 6 of those particular breaths, my heart rate will drop 20 points. So if you haven't tried it, I'd encourage you to at least experiment. You may not have the same experience, but.
All right. Thank you so much, Lars. Everyone have a great day.
Thanks, Joanna.
Bye-bye.